Welcome to one more episode of Don Williams Travel Adventures. Today's adventures will take us to the south rim of the Grand Canyon and a beautiful helicopter ride with Maverick Helicopter. I was fortunate enough to fly with a school teacher from the great state of Wisconsin and her teenage daughters. Each passenger wears a headset with earphones and mic so we communicate with the pilot.
So where's everybody from?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, awesome.
Cottage Grove, Oregon for me.
Oregon, okay, awesome. I'm from Evanston, Wyoming. Probably never even heard of the state. Not a popular area to visit.
I think. How high do you go?
When we get above the canyon, we'll be a little over 1 mile above the ground, a little over 5,000 feet.
Is it fun? Yes. Told you.
You missed that rock.
Barely. As we cross over the freeway here, we're going to be joining into the Kaibab National Forest. The forest here is home to about 2,000 different species. The most common thing that I see, though, is probably deer or elk, usually early in the morning or late towards the evening. All right, you guys, at this point, we're about 30 seconds before we cross over the rim, so if you got your cameras, you're going to want to go ahead and get those ready. This is one of my favorite parts of the tour. As soon as we get a little bit closer to the rim here, we'll only be about 100 feet off the ground. As soon as we cross over the rim, though, the floor is going to drop off a little bit over 1 mile, or about 1,600 meters. So if you're afraid of heights, this will probably be your favorite part of the tour as well.
Are you going to go see the boat?
What's that?
Yesterday we went on a van tour, and we went to the
Oh, I have that just a little bit closer. You're kind of cutting out.
and we saw the boat. Are we going to go see those?
The rafters, yeah, you might be able to see a few of them, but from up here, they look like little dots. We're going to point out the battleship up here. When we
Okay.
go over the north rim, I'll point it out to you.
Lord. No. Wow.
That is spectacular.
Not a bad view, huh?
Beautiful.
And over on the right, on the rim there, you can see a tower sticking up. That's the historical Desert View Watchtower. If you drove out here, you probably saw a few signs leading you to that point. It is one of the more popular sites to visit. It does give you a pretty good look at the east side of the Grand Canyon and the big Colorado River down here as well. The river is what's believed that's created the Grand Canyon, and it's the whole reason we get to wear these fancy life vests.
Oh, there's a raft down there, just on our left.
Yeah, you can see the blue ones there. They're the larger ones. They actually have a motor, so they're able to go through the tours a little faster. The smaller rafts there, they look like dots, but they're about 25 feet long.
Oh, wow.
And down there towards the base of the canyon, just above the water there, the temperature is always about 30 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than where we just took off from. The average temperature down there during the summer months is a little over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. And as we cross over at the altitude we're at, it doesn't look like it, but the river is about 300 feet wide, anywhere from a few inches all the way to 80 feet deep in some places. And you can imagine how large those rafts are versus the size of the rapids out there. This aircraft that we're flying in right now is a Eurocopter. It's an EC-130. It's a B-4 model. It's actually a French-designed aircraft. They actually build them in the United States. It does have a German engine in it called the Turbomeca. Down at sea level, this aircraft's capable of doing about 185 miles an hour. Over here on the left, there's a rock formation that kind of comes up to a point. That's the Vishnu Temple. The Hindus believe that that's the god of creation who created the earth. As you come over the north rim, there's another rock formation I'll point out to you. That's called Grandma Point, and that's considered to be the protector of the Vishnu. Down here on the right-hand side, there's a darker reddish-black colored rock. Well, what that is, it's an old lava flow. The volcano is actually on top of the rim. Over here on the right-hand side, it's got that little flat top there. As you get a little further up the river, you'll be able to see where the dark black rock kind of comes to a V. At one point, the lava flow, it used to dam the Grand Canyon up. helicopter provides a pretty unique view of how large the canyon really is up here at this altitude. It feels like we're hardly moving, almost hovering at times. We're still doing a little over 110 miles an hour.
Whoa.
And here in front of us, there's a rock formation that kind of comes to a sharp point. That's called Temple Butte. It is considered fairly sacred to the Native Americans because down there towards the base of the canyon, just above the water, there's a white-colored rock that kind of streaks the cliffside. Well, what that is salt. And as the young male Indians were entering adulthood, as a test, they would get sent down here to gather the salt, and they used to perform ancient rituals with it. Now that this area is part of the national park, all the Native Americans have been moved out to the Indian reservations. And down here in front of us, in my opinion, this is one of the prettier spots of the Grand Canyon. I'll make a big turn so everybody can see it. But where the two rivers come together, on the left you've got the big Colorado, and on the right you've got the little. When you do see the rivers, you're going to notice a pretty distinct color change. The little Colorado River, it mixes with a mineral called calcium carbonate. And that's the mineral is what gives the river that turquoise color. We're pretty fortunate to see it that color this time of year. Normally, because of the monsoon season, it's a milky brown from all the erosion that would be coming through. Now here in front of us, as far as your eye can see, this is called the Painted Desert. It gets its name because when the sun is just right, you can almost see every color of the rainbow. It is also home to one of the largest Indian reservations. It takes up about 25% of the state of Arizona, and it's home to a little over 300,000 Navajo Indians. A lot of the Native Americans out here try to resemble the color of their jewelry after the little Colorado. And the Grand Canyon here only takes up about 2% of Arizona. As you go over here on this side, this area isn't part of the national park. It is part of the Indian reservation. A lot of these dirt roads that you see, they're going to lead up right here to the edge. These ones are accessible to the public, and I do see people out here almost daily. The only bad thing about these dirt roads is it would take you about 3 hours to drive to a main paved road or to drive out to a spot like this.
What do you know about this new glass overlook?
The glass overlook, the sky view,
Yes.
it's owned by the Indians, and it's about 3 hours to the west, so we're not going to fly anywhere near it. It's about an hour outside of Vegas. But it only looks over about 1,500 feet straight down, and they won't let you take your cameras or anything like that. It's about, I think it's $40 to $60 a person.
I understand it's about 50 miles on a dirt road. Is that right?
It's about what?
50 miles on a dirt road?
To drive out to it?
Yes.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's quite the distance out on a dirt road to drive out to it. I haven't ever gone to it, though. And down here beneath us, there's a little half canyon. This is called 60 Mile. As I was talking earlier, there's different mile markers from the rafters. It's famous for the 60-mile rapids that are down here beneath us. It's about that distance from the Glen Canyon Dam. That's where the majority of your rafting tours do begin. Down here to the right, in the Grand Canyon, there hasn't been a major earthquake in hundreds of years, but when they did have one, you can see where the two plates came together. It makes a pretty distinct fault line. An easy way to identify the fault line is if you look over here to the right in that cliffside, down towards the base, there's a reddish colored rock that's sitting pretty flat or horizontal. As you go to the left and it starts to go vertical or make a spine, that's the fault line. We're going to be flying right over the top of it. And you can see it down here towards the base of the cliff here on the left-hand side as well. And over here to the right, in between these two plateaus here, inset a little bit on that reddish rock layer, there's a white rock formation. You have to use your imagination quite a bit, but they call that fish rock. In my opinion, helicopter rock.
Oh, yeah, yeah. How did you start becoming a helicopter pilot?
My older brother's a pilot too, at this company as well. I graduated from high school, and I went to school down in St. George, Utah for about a year, and he's like, you got to come check this out. And I went and flew, and I was like, there's nothing else that I could ever do, you know,
So
enjoy this as much anyways.
is it like your pilot's license for a regular plane? You have to get so many flying hours and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing as a fixed wing. The only thing is I can't, with my license, I couldn't hop in an airplane and go fly it. I would have to get training in an airplane to fly the airplane and get a certificate to fly that.
How long did it take you to get your pilot's license?
To get my private license to fly by myself, it took me about 4 months.
Okay.
But I went through and got like my commercial rating, my instrument rating, and my instructor ratings, and that took me about a full year to do everything like that. But it's definitely worth it. It's a pretty cool job.
Yeah.
And over here to the right, this is where the river branches off and heads up to the Glen Canyon Dam. That's right near Lake Powell. That is the beginning of the Grand Canyon. And at the dam, they do regulate the amount of water that comes through, so it stays relatively the same width and depth all year round. The temperature is also fairly constant, about 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Yesterday on the news, I heard that Lake Powell is about 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Pretty good time to go visit the lake. over here to the left, you can see that this is the highest point over here. It is the highest spot in the north rim. It's about 1,500 feet higher than the south rim. It's called Imperial Point. It is about 9,000 feet above sea level. One of the lowest spots in the Grand Canyon is only about 2,200 feet above sea level. And because of that elevation change, as you can see, the north rim receives quite a bit more moisture, about 30% annually. The vegetation is even a little more dense towards the base. Generally, because of the lack of vegetation towards the base of the canyon, you're not going to see a lot of your larger wildlife. A lot of reptiles, lizards, snakes, things like that. And on top of the north rim, the temperature is always 10 to 20 degrees colder than where we took off from. So you'll see snow in the shadow of the trees all the way to the beginning of June. And just to the left of Imperial Point, there's a rock formation standing up by itself. Kind of looks like a big thumb. That's called Mount Hayden. That's probably the most popular picture in the Grand Canyon. A lot of your calendars and postcards are going to be of that rock right there. Pretty easy to lose perspective of the size of things here because everything in the Grand Canyon is so massive. But the rock on Mount Hayden stands 300 feet tall. And right here in front of us, this is the Battleship Mountain. Its original name was actually Brady's Point, but unfortunately for Brady, it looks way too much like a battleship. As we come over here on top of the north rim, you can see that there's a lot of missing trees. About 12 years ago, the Rec Service, they came out here to do a controlled burn. They only planned on burning about 200 acres, but the winds picked up. They actually burned at about 14,000 up here in the Grand Canyon. As a joke.
This is the north rim.
Did I say south? Yeah, this is the north rim. If I said south, sorry about that. But they actually ended up burning about 14,000 acres. Over here to the left, this is one of the more popular sites in the canyon. It's called Bright Angel. It's also the widest portion of the Grand Canyon. It varies in width, anywhere from 4 miles all the way to 18 miles wide there. And down in Bright Angel, that's where the majority of your popular hikes and your mule tours are done. And down here beneath us, this is the main North Rim Drive. If you were to drive out here from the Maverick base, it would take you a little over 4 hours to get to this point. We've done it in about 30 minutes. Throughout this entire flight, we'll cover a little over 100 miles. And the main North Rim drive back there is one of the only roads in the winter months that gets plowed. They do close this area down because of the amount of snow they receive. And out here in front of us, it kind of looks like an old golf course. What it was back in the 1950s, it used to be an old bison farm. The farmer actually went bankrupt, packed up his things, but he left the animals behind. Not sure exactly how many got left, but every once in a while as we cross over, we still see the wild bison out running around. As we come over the trees here, we'll be joining the western portion of the tour. This bowl here, they call it the Dragon's Corridor. It gets its name because you have to use your imagination again, but this middle elongated rock formation looks a little bit like a dragon. To the left, the dome is his head, drops down for his neck. The high point is the back. Over here to the right is the dragon's tail. See that helicopter coming over the tail there just behind us? He just called it, was talking to me. You can see these little carve outs on the cliff side, on the right hand side and the left as well. It's real pretty. After a pretty heavy rainstorm, all these will be little waterfalls.
Do you fly in heavy rain?
Why in heavy rain?
Yes.
Just because you get a little bit more water. You'll get little ones in the light rain. It's just easier to see when it's heavier. Over here to the right, that little kick out there is the left arm of the dragon. You got his neck, the dome is his head. Next little kick out there is his left ear. Will fly along the mouth, and it's pretty symmetrical to this, just on the other side. Some people believe that the dragon's what protects the Grand Canyon. And over here to the left, you can see the different types of rock formations in the Grand Canyon. That top lighter colored rock on the top there is called sandstone. It's the Coconino sandstone. Because of that layer being there on the top, we don't generally get a lot of rock climbers out here just because it's pretty brittle and their equipment doesn't stick into it very well. They do climb out here, it's just not a real popular site for it. But as you go down, there's a reddish colored rock, that's called limestone. As the limestone mixes with iron, the iron is what gives the rock that reddish color. When the big Colorado River was eroding through that layer there, the dirt would dye it a pretty distinct red, so it gained the nickname Rio Colorado, meaning Red River. And over here to the right, down towards the base, there's a darker black colored rock in this little canyon there. Now that is the oldest exposed rock layer out here. It's called the schist. Geologists, they estimate it to be about 1.8 billion years old. From what I understand, it's the third oldest rock layer on Earth. And because of that rock layer being down there towards the base, the Grand Canyon doesn't get as deep. It's quite as fast as it used to when it was up there near the sandstone. And over to the right, you can see the big Colorado River coming into view. With the river, they do measure the length of the Grand Canyon. It's estimated to be about 277 miles long. If you look as far as you can see to the right, and as far as you can see to the left, we can only see about 1/5 of the Grand Canyon at this point. And down here beneath us, this is called the Tower of Ra. I dream about landing on that platform every day. over here to the right, those rapids that you can see, the ones fairly close to us, those are the Crystal Springs. They're the most dangerous out here. Most places, they use a scale of 1 to 5 to rate the size. The canyon, they use a scale of 1 to 10. The Crystal Springs range from a Class 7 all the way to a Class 9. They say that a Class 10 would be unsafe to pass through, and on a Class 7 rapid, the wall of water could reach up to be about 12 feet tall. Those are one of the only rapids that once the water level gets to a certain point, the rafters will actually get out of their rafts and walk around. And down here to the left, these rapids, they used to be the most dangerous prior to the rock slide that created the Crystal Springs. These ones down here aren't quite as deep, but the length, they're almost as long as 3 football fields. And just above that, you can follow this creek up. There's a little thin trail that kind of zigzags away the top of the hill here, makes its way along the cliffside to that valley, and then back up the hill there. That's called Hermit's Trail. Hermit's Trail leads up to Hermit's Rest. You might be able to see some windshields flickering here at the top. They have a couple viewing areas that you could drive out to and look over. The trail, though, if you planned on hiking it, would take you about 5 hours just to hike down to the bottom, about 10 hours to hike back to the top. They do recommend, if you plan on doing the entire hike, to do it in a 2-day trip, but just like the rafters, it could take some time to get a permit to camp in the Grand Canyon. They do regulate the amount of people that are allowed on that trail at one time. And as we come over the rim here, we'll be rejoining the Kaibab again, and that sky view would be about a 3-hour drive almost directly to the right here, or about a 45-minute flight. Down here beneath us, this is the boundary road. It divides the national park here on the left, the national forest here on the right. One of the major tribes that lives over here is the Havasupai. When it's overcast like this is one of my favorite times to fly. I feel like the colors are a little bit more vibrant, plus the sun's not in your eyes. All right, you guys, as we make our way back here to the helipad, go ahead and keep your headsets on until I get the engine shut off. And your seatbelts, you're going to keep those buckled, because this is a part of the flight I'm not very good at. I'm just joking. Both their eyes went pretty bright.
How many flights a day do you make?
It depends on the day, but we'll do anywhere from about 7 to 9 flights a day.
This is what, number?
This is my 3rd flight for the day.